The morning sun spilled its light across the towering glass building as employees hurried through the revolving doors, clutching their coffee cups and schedules. Inside, at the very top floor, in a sleek corner office that overlooked the city, sat Alexander Reed, a man known as the youngest self-made millionaire in the industry. To most, he was intimidating, sharp, and unapproachable. His office was usually filled with high-powered executives and investors, but on this unusual morning, the door creaked open softly and a little girl stepped in. She couldn't have been more than 9 years old, her small hands clutching a worn folder that seemed far too big for her. Her brown hair was tied into 2 messy braids, and her shoes squeaked nervously against the polished floor. The secretary, startled, rushed after her, apologizing profusely. "Sir, I'm so sorry, I tried to stop her." But before she could finish, the little girl straightened her shoulders and said softly but firmly, "Mom's sick, so I came instead." The room froze. Alexander looked up from the papers on his desk, his sharp eyes narrowing, not in anger but in surprise. He dismissed the secretary with a wave of his hand. "Let her speak." The little girl stepped closer, carefully placing the folder on his desk. Her hands trembled slightly, but her voice carried a determination far beyond her years. "My mom was supposed to come today. She had a meeting with you, but she's very sick. She asked me to bring this instead." Alexander's brows furrowed. He flipped open the folder to find sketches, notes, and a business plan written neatly in a woman's hand. He remembered now. He had seen the appointment in his calendar. A small business owner was scheduled to pitch a partnership deal, but she hadn't shown up. He hadn't expected her daughter to walk in her place. "And what do you know about this plan?" he asked carefully. The girl hesitated, then replied, "I know it's everything to my mom. She stayed up all night working on it. She said if this project works, we can finally stop worrying about rent and medicine. I don't know all the big words, but I know it's important. And I promised her I would deliver it." Her honesty struck something deep in him. Alexander leaned back in his chair, studying her. Most people came into his office rehearsed, desperate to impress, often hiding their true intentions behind polished speeches. But this little girl, with her too big folder and too small shoes, had walked in with nothing but sincerity. "What's your name?" he asked. "Emma," she said. "Well, Emma," he said with a faint smile, "you've done your job. You delivered it. Now what do you think I should do?" She bit her lip, her eyes glistening, but she didn't cry. "I think you should give my mom a chance. She's really smart, even if she's not rich like everyone else you work with. She just needs one person to believe in her." Silence hung in the air. For a man who had built his empire on negotiations, numbers, and ruthless decisions, this was different. He saw in Emma the kind of courage he had once needed when he was young and poor, knocking on doors no one opened for him. Without realizing it, his expression softened. He closed the folder and stood. "Tell your mom she doesn't have to worry. I'll come to her instead." Emma blinked in surprise. You will?" "Yes," he nodded. "And you can tell her she already has her chance. Because anyone who can raise a daughter brave enough to walk into my office like this is someone worth investing in." For the first time that day, Emma smiled, a smile so wide and pure that it melted the icy aura of the office. She clutched the folder to her chest and whispered, "Thank you, sir. I knew you'd understand." Later that afternoon, Alexander found himself in a modest apartment on the other side of town, sitting at a small kitchen table with Emma's mother, who was pale but grateful. The deal that came from that meeting not only lifted their family out of struggle but also reminded the millionaire of something he had nearly forgotten in his rise to power: that business wasn't just about profit, it was about people, and sometimes, the bravest negotiator could be a child fighting for the person she loved most. And from that day on, whenever anyone asked him about his greatest investment, Alexander Reed would smile faintly and say, "It began with a little girl who walked into my office and said, 'Mom's sick, so I came instead.'" The power of true courage often appears in the most unexpected forms, and sometimes it is not delivered through polished speeches, tailored suits, or carefully planned negotiations, but through the unshaken heart of a child who carries love as her only weapon. The story of a little girl walking into the office of a self-made millionaire, uttering the words, "Mom's sick, so I came instead," is not just an anecdote of chance, it is a keynote reminder that greatness is not measured by wealth alone, but by the ability to recognize humanity, vulnerability, and determination in others. In that single moment, a hardened businessman who had spent years surrounded by numbers, contracts, and power was reminded of the purity of intention, the raw bravery of stepping into a room far bigger than yourself, and the unshakable bond between a mother and her child. This keynote is about the silent lesson Emma carried into that office. That courage is not about having the right words, it is about showing up even when the odds are stacked against you, about speaking from the heart when knowledge fails you, and about believing so fiercely in someone else's worth that the world is forced to pause and listen. For Alexander Reed, the millionaire at the other side of the desk, this was not merely a meeting, it was a reckoning. He had spent his life fighting his way through rejection, building walls of steel around himself so that no weakness could slip through. But when he looked at that child, clutching her mother's folder with trembling hands yet standing tall enough to deliver her promise, he saw himself again, the boy who once knocked on doors that never opened, the dreamer who once prayed for just one chance. And in her small voice, he heard the echo of his own younger desperation, a reminder of how easily the world overlooks those who are not already powerful. The true keynote of this story is that leadership, in its highest form, is not about commanding fear or securing profit, but about recognizing the invisible strength in others and choosing to lift them when they cannot lift themselves. Emma did not walk into that office to negotiate terms or demand attention, she walked in carrying hope, and hope, when spoken through the lips of a child, is impossible to ignore. Alexander's choice to see her, to listen, and to go himself to her mother's small apartment was more than an act of kindness, it was a declaration that no matter how high we climb, we must never forget the ground from which we rose. In business, in leadership, and in life, we often measure success by what we build for ourselves, but this story teaches us that true success is what we choose to build for others. Emma's bravery gave her mother a chance, but it also gave Alexander something far more valuable than any deal, a reminder of his own humanity. And perhaps that is the keynote message we should all carry: never underestimate the power of showing up for someone else, never underestimate the courage hidden in small voices, and never forget that the greatest opportunities often come disguised as ordinary moments of love. Because in the end, the story will not be remembered as a millionaire signing another contract, it will be remembered as the day a little girl reminded a powerful man that the worth of a person is never measured by status or wealth, but by the courage to walk into a room and say, "Mom's sick, so I came instead."